I'm Jamie Schumacher, and this micro tour is entitled Publishing and Promoting Your Work. So this is focused on how we at the library can be of assistance as you engage in the publication and promotion activities in your work. So visually, those activities happen when you're at this point in the research life cycle. So you've already perhaps received a grant, you've done the research, you've gone back, you've perhaps gotten more money, you've done a lot of work to get to the point where you have findings that you want to share. The narrative of this presentation is going to focus on research articles, but the concepts apply to all faculty outputs. So that could be books, perhaps conference presentations, instructional materials that you create, artistic performances. So you get the idea. So we're focusing on this area, the publication, dissemination, and access, and how the library can help you. So we can help you as you navigate the workflow that is typically followed in this phase of research. So we are going to talk about how the library can provide guidance on the various publishing options you have for your scholarly outputs. We're going to talk about how we can help you navigate your rights as an author, creator, and consumer of scholarly materials. And we're going to talk about how the library can assist you as we create equitable and enduring access to your scholarly outputs. And I'll be touching on each of the following subtopics for all of those, but really these are all super intertwined. So you'll find buzzwords mentioned throughout the presentation here. The goal today is not to have you walk away like knowing all the things. Rather, I'm going to provide you with a general education around these topics so that we can create a connection and you then will know where to turn when the time comes. So let's start by looking at academic journals. Once you've entered the phase of the scholarly research cycle where you have material ready to be put through the peer review process and you have identified possible journals that fit well with your subject matter, you may find that they operate using a variety of business models. At the highest levels, these are subscription journals, open access journals, and hybrid journals. But be aware that there are predatory journals and publishers out there that are eager to get a piece of the action, and they are sometimes difficult to discern from genuine academic journals, especially now that they can use AI to generate pretty decent looking websites that seem to be academic journals, and they often follow similar naming conventions as academic journals you may be aware of. So if you are ever in doubt, this is where the library can help you. Me or your subject librarian can take a look at potential journals that you're considering and let you know if there's any that you should be wary of. In fact, your subject specialist librarian is going to be an excellent resource for helping you compare like the impact of journals you've identified for possible publication, as well as looking at other resources. So always remember your subject librarian when you get to this point of your publication life cycle. So a long time ago, these Choose Your Own Adventure books were published, and they were really cool because they would start the story and then you got to choose the path to your ultimate goal. And it was quite fun to go back and do it different ways. And as we go about our academic careers, we often find ourselves publishing in different types of journals. So it's important to remember that all of these are legitimate forms of publishing. They just have various different business models. So the subscription journals, these are more traditional journals in that you have to pay to read them. There's no cost to the author to publish in them, but you do have to pay to read them. And that could be the reader themselves or their institution has a subscription to the journal. How that looks like for a reader is when a paywall pops up. So you click on an article, you think that's going to be a good fit for you. Most of the world will receive a paywall notice and be asked to pay a certain fee to read one specific article, because most folks in the world do not have the privilege of belonging to an institution that subscribes to the journal itself. Then there are what are called open access journals. These are free to users to read. So there's of course still costs associated with running open access journals, just like any academic journal, but that cost is not put on the reader. So they don't pay to access content. Some of these journals have what are called article processing charges, where the cost to run the journal is recouped at the time of publication. And we're going to talk a bit about how those charges are often taken care of on your behalf. And some open access journals are in a transformative period to becoming fully open access. We're seeing this a lot more as we as a community are realizing the importance of having equitable access to knowledge and not hiding it behind paywalls that most can't afford to pay. So there's a period of transformation happening, and there are different funding models for that period of transformation. And we'll get into that in just a moment. The other type of journal is a hybrid journal, which is basically a little bit of both. So what happens is it's a traditional subscription journal that institutions will pay for, but they will ask the authors or their institutions to pay an additional fee at the time of publication to create open access to one specific article. And this is a less sustainable model for libraries and institutions, as we often end up paying for the same content to be published twice. And so we provide other options here at the library. We're happy to help you navigate those, and I'll get to those in a little bit. So speaking of those options for specifically open access journals, let's say you've selected an open access journal that has a cost associated with it. Something like an APC. So what are your options? Here at the NIU Libraries, along with the Research of Innovation Partnerships at the university level, we provide funding to NIU authors through an open access publishing fund. This year, the amount of funds available are $20,000, and these are one award per person per year. There is an application process, and the journals that are included in author's application are vetted by a review board, and these are available twice a year. So currently we're accepting applications through the middle of September for consideration, and the awards will be notified, the notifications will be sent out towards the end of September. So if you have a manuscript that's almost ready to get to be submitted to a journal, go ahead and take a look at that, and we can talk about providing some funding in order for you to publish in an open access journal. Now, for those that are in that transformative period, we at the library pay for some read and publish agreements that encompass hundreds of journals. So that APC that comes up for you, quote unquote, to pay when it's time to publish your article, that is taken care of on the back end already by the library. And there is a link where you can take a look at the transformative agreements that we have in place with 4 different publishers, and that includes the Cambridge University Press. And then additionally, if your research is grant funded, and many folks are, most grant funding agencies encourage the inclusion of those APC charges in your research grant budgets. So funders are requiring that your research publication be openly available to the public, and that's a good thing. The scary thing is it's like, oh, there are fees related to that. Yep, they are aware, and they are willing to include that in your budget. And we at the library have some template language you can include in your grant application to cover those open access fees. Now, as you continue down your chosen application adventure, we at the library want to help you navigate the complexities of things like copyright, licensing, and protecting your academic profile. So when we talk about copyright, we're talking about the creation of anything related that you've made in relation to your research and even your teaching outputs. So we'll talk a bit more about your instructional materials, both the materials you create and possibly the materials that you want to use that belong to others. So the copyright is created when you make something and it's fixed in a tangible way. That automatically generates copyright. You don't have to register it. And when you own the copyright of something, so your manuscript, your data set, perhaps some tools that went along into collecting the data for your research, owning the copyright for that provides you with exclusive rights. You have the right to reproduce that material, to distribute it as you see fit, to create derivatives. So perhaps you have a manuscript and you want to create a presentation off of it. That would be a derivative. You can display it, and if it's an artistic work, perform it. You have these exclusive rights to this material for your life plus 70 years, unless you choose otherwise. So this could look like the transfer of your copyright to another entity. And in that research publication life cycle, that sometimes looks like the free transfer of your copyright to a publisher so that the rights mentioned previously are no longer yours. At that point, it becomes illegal for you to freely distribute your own research. So at the library, we want to assist you as you consider your options when you're thinking about your copyright. Another option is to relinquish the copyright altogether, to make the copyright essentially disappear so that no one ever can have copyright of that material. So that's putting something in the public domain. Or you can choose to keep your copyright and convey usage privileges, which allows other people to use your materials in very specific ways. And we can do this through assigning Creative Commons licenses. And we'll talk a little bit more about Creative Commons licenses in just a moment. But why is this important? Well, remember this slide where we talked about some of our materials, once we transfer that copyright especially, becomes hidden behind paywalls. Retaining our copyright or receiving a license for our materials, even if we hand the copyright over to a publisher, preserves our ability to distribute and promote our work in whatever manner we see fit. So even if the version of record is kept behind a paywall, being intentional with your copyright decisions provides paths towards equitable access to your content. So more soon on that. I told you this is all very intertwined. So what about the materials you yourself want to use in your research and your teaching? So these are materials that belong to other people. So the library can help you navigate this as well. There are lots of quality materials out there that are freely available. You might have questions about like, well, what can I use legally in my instruction in my classroom? How can I find these quality materials? Where are they at? And how can I use those? Can I just put this textbook onto Blackboard that belongs to someone else? It's a PDF. Can I put it on there? It's important to remember that even if something is freely available on the internet, that does not mean it's freely usable. You cannot use it in any way that you see fit. And that's true for your material. Just because you're publishing materials and putting it out there and it's free to access, that doesn't mean you're giving folks the right to use it in any way that they want. So I mentioned Creative Commons licenses. The library can help you navigate this world as well, because it's important to understand how you can use other people's materials in your own work, in your research and your instruction. And it's even more important, I think, to thoughtfully convey your intentions for your material. Let's say you have assessment material, or you have an article or a book chapter. You can assign a license to this material, keeping your copyright, but it intentionally conveys to other people how you permit them to use your material. Are they allowed to grab a copy of it and put it on their website? Do they need to attribute you? Can they take what you've created and modify it and adapt it in any way? Can they use it for commercial purposes? Let's say you've published a book and you want to make it freely available. You can assign a license to it that says, hey, this is free to you to use and share. Please credit me, but you may not print this out and sell it for commercial purposes. You can also add a license that says, hey, if you use this material in any way, whatever you create off of it needs to be shared in the same way. So these are all complex topics, but the fortunate thing is that the library is here to help you navigate them when you get to that part of the research and sharing life cycle. And just one more quick topic for this section is maintaining the integrity of your academic identity. One of the simplest and most impactful ways to control and promote your academic identity is through the creation of what's called an ORCID ID. And this is, like it says on the screen, a persistent, unique identifier that distinguishes you from others. There are a lot of folks with similar sounding names out there. And when you are wanting to claim your rights over the work you've created, having a unique identifier will distinguish you from the others that have similar names as you. And it also provides a central place to record your scholarly outputs and your contributions. And many publishers will only consider a manuscript if you have an ORCID ID established and have connected it with your manuscript. And funding agencies, especially by January of next year, are going to make this a requirement in your grant applications. Fortunately, it's free to create and maintain, and you can find more information at that link. And just to show you real quickly what that looks like, here is one of our folks at NIU. This is what Courtney's ORCID record looks like. A very quick biography, and then employment information, education and qualification information, professional activities, funding that Courtney has received, grant funding, and then both the works Courtney has published and the works that the activities that Courtney has performed as a peer reviewer. And what's nice is this is not specific to Northern Illinois University. This record can follow you wherever you go in your academic career. So you're actually going to be seeing a local push at NIU for all of our stakeholders to build out their ORCID profiles as we work to align our internal systems and our community-facing outreach with the data that's in your ORCID record. We at the library, it's fairly simple to do, but we are happy to assist you as you create that academic footprint and create your unique ID. So finally, let's go back to that concept of sharing the content of your output, even if the version of record is behind a paywall. At NIU, we have an institutional repository called Huskie Commons. It is a service that we provide to showcase and preserve the scholarly materials and the creative works that are produced by NIU faculty, our students, and members of our community. They bring together all of the university's research and creative works under one umbrella. to not only preserve it, to provide global free access to those materials. So what that will look like, if we're thinking about it from our workflow point of view, is let's say you've published something and it's in a traditional subscription journal, and we have negotiated the ability to make your manuscript freely available through NIU's repository. Now, most publishers have come up with policies that allow this to happen naturally without needing to make addendums to like author agreements. It's becoming much easier to do this, and we at the library are happy to look at the publishers' policies to see what version of your article can be shared, and like if there needs to be an embargo period associated with it, or what specific language needs to accompany it. And what that will look like for end users, below is an example on Google Scholar, where someone might look up on Google Scholar a topic and find an article. You can see underlined in red on the left-hand side of the screen that content will have multiple versions available. Folks now know to click on that if they find that the version of record is behind a paywall, which in this case it was, and that will pop up another screen showing where those different versions live. Finding a version that's associated with a .edu address, like the Huskie Commons ones, is often an indicator to the users that, hey, I'm going to be able to access this material without paying for something. And it's done legally, and it's a service provided to you and frankly to the world, so that we can get your content out there and make it equitably accessible. Also, when posting your materials into Huskie Commons, you can include supplemental files with your material. So like data sets, perhaps slides from a conference presentation, and recorded presentations. And it's not just articles. I know I keep talking about the articles, but if we go and we look, I'm just going to Alt tab my way over to Huskie Commons here. There are many types of research, artistic materials available freely and openly through our institutional repository. So when we're looking specifically at faculty materials, it can include books and book chapters, important lectures and seminars. So these aren't your weekly class lectures. These would be seminal presentations that have happened, that have been recorded, that have been produced by the NIU community. Research data sets. If there's no discipline-specific repository for your research data set and your publisher is requiring that it be made available, we can do that for you. And we'll just hop real quick over to look at the various books and book chapters that are available. So we have faculty members that have published chapters in books, and those books are available only for purchase, but we can contact the press and request that we make a copy of their chapter available via open access in our institutional repository. And most times we are able to do that. And then just real quickly, in Huskie Commons, your students are able to showcase their work here as well, not just our theses and dissertations, but our students who are in the honors program. They get to publish their capstones with their faculty approval in Huskie Commons. We also have journals that are published through Huskie Commons, and we have open educational resources. So these are things like textbooks that our faculty have created that they've decided to make openly available and assign one of those Creative Commons licenses to it, so that other people instructing in the same field are able to use those resources. That's just a very quick look at Huskie Commons, but again, the point is that when the time comes, you'll know who to reach out to when these questions come up. So I am really grateful for the opportunity to talk about these topics, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.